Right. So I know this diagram looks mad, but if you'll bear with me for a minute, I really do think in numbers, and the sooner you can start thinking in numbers, the better, because then you can memorize all your scales. Let me pose it to you like this. Suppose you memorize all your scales in one position, and you know it really well, and it takes you, I don't know. All right, let's say it takes you a month. In 5 months, you'll know all your scales in every position. It's like people don't understand that seeing the connection between the scales can also help memorize the scales themselves. I mean, never mind memorizing just dots on a page. That's why you can't put it all together. You have to, all right, we're going to take the G shape. So you have to know that, all right, now this particular diagram is drawn in the key of A just because this one note is at the fifth fret. So we're going to use A as our example. Now, when you look over here, it has the major pentatonic, not only the scale formula, but like the spatial relationship of each note. In other words, from 1 to 2, it's a whole step, meaning 2 frets, then whole, and then here is a whole and a half. So 3 frets between 3 and 5, and then 5 to 6 is a whole, and then here to here is a whole half. You should be able to figure that out just by knowing that the major pentatonic scale formula is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Because if you compare it to what was right below it, the major scale, this is like the golden, thing for all music theory. If there's a half step between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, everything else is a whole step, right? So you should be able to deduce that since the major pentatonic is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then 8 again, which is the same as 1, that the formula would be like whole, whole, whole and a half, or what we call minor third. Minor third is a whole and a half, 3 frets, and then whole and then minor third. So suppose you play the major pentatonic first. Then it's just here. Let me keep the roots circled in green, in red, and then we'll just do a different color for the scale itself. So that's your major pentatonic. Hopefully you recognize that fingering when I draw it out amidst all this clutter. The advantage of thinking in numbers is that I can predict how this is going to sound. If you've trained your ear to hear intervals, then if you're thinking in numbers and not just dots on the page, assuming what you know what this A sounds like, I'm not advocating that you should try to learn perfect pitch. You can learn that, by the way, but I just played an A on the guitar to get the sound of it, and it would be, I know that this scale is going to sound like excuse my singing, but I can predict what it's going to sound like, and I know where it is because I know where all these intervals are. And as you start to think in numbers, you will also see that. Now, when you're going from the major pentatonic to the major scale, all you're doing is adding 2 notes. So look at this. You're adding the 4 and the 7, because instead of 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 up here, now you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So all you do is add the 4 and the 7. You should know where the 4 and the 7 is without having to memorize diagrams, because the 4 is just a half step up from 3, and the 7 is a half step below 1. So there's your major scale, which I know is going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, etc. So, whoops, I forgot to circle this 6 right here. So there's that. So you have to put these scales together by position. And by the way, if you use 3 notes per string instead of this caged way of doing it, that's fine. The system is the same. I could make a whole another set of diagrams for that, but you got to see the interconnection between scales. Now let's move on to the minor pentatonics. I'm going to get rid of all this except for the ones. The minor pentatonic formula, here, I'll do it in blue, is 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, and then you got 1 again, then flat, the whole formula repeats again. So hopefully that pattern, the blue and the reds together, looks familiar too. And it sounds like flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. Right? I'm not going to sing the next octave, not my range. So that should look familiar. And then when you go here, that was this right here, minor pentatonic. When you go from the minor pentatonic to the minor scale, which I'll do in green, you're adding 2 and flat 6 to it. So all you do is find the twos, which is just one fret down from the flat threes, and the flat six, which is one fret up from the five, I'm sorry. So all the twos and the flat sixes are here. And then now you got, did I circle everything I was supposed to? Now you got 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. And so that's like not a big deal because it's only two extra notes from the minor pentatonic. And then let's go back to the minor pentatonic for a second. If you do the blues scale, which I'll do in a different color, let's call it orange. Now all you're adding is the flat 5 to the minor pentatonic scale. So from this to this, you're only adding one note. So you just circle all the flat 5s. And now you have a blues scale. Flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 7, 1, 1, flat 7, 5, flat 5, 4, flat 3, 1, flat 7, 1. Like your ear and your music theory and your fretboard theory all combine when you do it this way. I'm not going to do the other 5 shapes, but it can be that simple if you choose to go that route where you just memorize one shape. You memorize all the scales in one shape. And then that's 20% of your work, and you can quantify it and be like, okay, I'm 20% of, and yes, there are more scales than just these 5, but these are by far the most common. So, and the more scales you learn, you'll just plug them into the same system. You know, when you finally learn, if you learn other modes, let's say like Dorian, Mixolydian, whatever it is, or maybe harmonic minor or, melodic minor, whatever you're going to learn, it fits into the same way of thinking, right? These are all almost all the notes you have. It's 11 out of 12 notes. The only note I didn't put on here is the flat 2. Here, let's just look at that. So this is like all the notes here. Let me just draw that in like purple or something. Here's the flat 2. That's the only note that's left out. And this would be, if you played all this, which would sound terrible, it'd be called the chromatic scale. Like, I'm not going to try and sing it because this isn't an ear training video, but you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 notes before you get back to 1, which is everything we got.